Come after me. I met a gentleman yesterday, and he was sharing with me some of his story. He said that about 2.5 years ago, somebody gave him a book about Mother Teresa. And who's not intrigued by Mother Teresa? So he's like, okay. So he starts reading some of it. And what comes obvious is that Mother Teresa was a woman of great prayer. We see all the action she did, but it was driven by her prayer with the Lord. And so he said that in reading this book, he became inspired. He said, if she found her strength by praying, then I want to pray. And so he said, he's kind of like a businessman. So he's like, here's what I'm going to do. The first quarter of the year, I'm going to pray for 15 minutes a day. Then the second quarter, I'm going to pray for 30 minutes and kind of go from there. And so he's a busy man with a business, 3 kids, he's married. And I said, well, how'd it go? He said, well, I began doing that. I began to just sit in the chapel every day and just to be with the Lord. And he said it was actually going really well until I got up to like an hour a day, which is pretty crazy because I have like a wife and kids, And he said all of a sudden it just felt like nothing was happening. Like I was showing up, but the Lord wasn't there. And so he told his wife, he said, hey, I don't think I'm going to do this prayer thing anymore because nothing's happening. And his wife said to him, she said, well, okay, if you're not going to go, then I'm going to go. You watch the kids, But I think you should keep going. Just because you're not getting anything out of it, I think you should just keep going. And he said that not even 1 week later, the Lord just showed up. And just let him know that he's there. Let him know that he's loved. And he said that was 1.5 years, and that hasn't gone away. And so he said, now I love being able to go and just to seek the Lord, and everything else will follow. Every one of us is invited to come after and follow the Lord. That we hear in the gospel how the initial apostles are called, and we hear in that things that speak to how the Lord continues to call us today. You imagine the scene. I kind of like the details here. So Jesus is walking by, and here's Simon and his brother Andrew. And even the active tense of this verb says they were casting a net into the sea. So they're in the boat. And so you can just imagine them, they're, okay, on three or after 3. Okay, so let's just swing the net, and they're casting their net, and then Jesus is like, hey, Simon, and he's just like, dude, not in my backswing, come on, man, but that's the moment when he calls. It's a specific moment, they're casting. It's not a convenient moment. The Lord is not convenient, but his timing is perfect. Jesus walks along and he sees James and John, and so they're in a boat, they're mending their nets, which means they probably got caught on something, think they're not having a good day, and he calls them. And it says they immediately left their boat and their father and followed him. There's a lot of college students I speak to who feel called to do something with their life that's different than what their parents want them to do. But the Lord calls individually. And at some point, it's going to happen that our parents who want what's best for us, we want what's best for us, that it's going to be different from what the Lord kind of leads us to, what the Lord puts on our heart that might be different from our parents. And it might be a risk. It might feel like we're letting go, like we don't love our parents or something. But if I am responding to the invitation from the Lord to come after him, it's somehow, if I'm doing what's best for me, it's also what's best for everybody. And so the Lord calls and he comes when he chooses. And he doesn't he doesn't stop and say, okay, well, so here's the situation. I want to test your skills and know who you are. And let me explain every single thing that's going to happen to you in the future so that you can be fully informed. And then you can choose whether you want to follow me or not. He just says, come. But there's something about his invitation that speaks deeply to the human soul. That says, I was made for this. That I desire this call. I desire to follow you. That my heart is most fulfilled as I seek after you. And so the Lord calls. But what does it sound like? Because I've never heard voices. You can rest assured, I've never heard voices in prayer. Most people haven't, right? But the voice of the Lord, the call, it's a little different than that. It's tonight. Tonight when you said that thought, that reminder, when you looked at the clock and you're like, I need to go to Mass. And then there was maybe another voice, perhaps, maybe not, that said, yeah, but it's starting to snow outside. Yeah, but it's cold out there. Yet no one's going to know if you don't go. And there's this two voices. And so the voice of Christ invites. It's not a voice of guilt, of judgment. It just says, there's just a drawing, if that makes sense. I should do this. I want to do this. And what's beautiful is every time we do and we listen to that voice, that afterwards we feel good. Like we feel peace. Like, I did what I needed to do. That's where I needed to be tonight. And if we don't listen to that voice, that's fine. But sometimes that's when the voice of guilt comes in. Like, look at how bad a Catholic you are. Like, and that voice of condemnation, the accuser, which is the voice of the evil one. Christ invites. The other one discourages and accuses. Here's some other, I don't know if these situations are as clear. Well, here's one. I think it's clear. It's getting late at night, and there's an invitation to, I'm spending time with my significant other. And then I have this thought that, hey, this is getting late, I wonder what's going to happen. Maybe I should go home. And there's a drawing, there's an invitation of, if I want to do what's prudent, I should, go home, and then I can do what I need to. But then we say, no. All we're doing is we're just going to watch some TV. No, we're just hanging out. No, we're just going to grab something to eat. We're just, whatever. And so we feel drawn to what we should do, but then we talk ourselves out of it. And we know the fruit of that when we, the next day or whatever, when we look back and we say, I stayed up a little too late. I didn't get my work done. I'm tired today. And we don't feel good about that decision. Another invitation is, I think, the invitation to pray. You're sitting there in your room and you're like, I want to start praying, but I'm really tired. Or my roommate's still up. This might be awkward. And so we have this impulse, this invitation, and we talk ourselves out of it. And so sometimes, for me, I can recognize the voice of Christ, especially when I hear the voice of the excuses afterwards. That when I find myself thinking about, I feel like I should do this. And then all of a sudden I think, no, it'll be too hard. I should give this a try. No, I'm scared to. I feel like God might be inviting me to. No, it's much more comfortable just to stay here. And so each of those moments is a moment where the Lord is inviting us to come after him. And it's just an invitation. But what I have found in my life is that the more I can listen to those impulses, the more I see God at work, the more peace there is, and the easier it is to hear that voice in the future. Because if I train myself to not listen to that, it actually gets harder and harder to hear it. And then I'm thinking, I never hear God's voice. I never know what he's calling me to. Well, we can train ourselves one way or the other. I think I love the beginning of a semester because it's a new beginning. And so it doesn't matter with the Lord whether the last month of our lives was the best month of our lives or the worst. But that Jesus is saying, this is a new beginning. It doesn't matter where we've been. It doesn't matter what's going on in our lives. We don't have to have it all figured out to follow the Lord. But he just says, come after me. And as we start to walk that path and we think about, okay, Lord, I want to follow you, but are you telling me to do this or that? Am I supposed to break up or stay together? Do I change my major or do I do this? Do I drop out of school? Tell me, Lord, do I go left or right? Which way? But the key is this. We don't follow a way. We follow the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. That when Jesus says, come after me, he's not saying, Simon and Andrew, follow this way of life. He's saying, follow me.